Hi guys, this is Connor, and today I'll be presenting my lesson plan for IT 300. And so the Common Core standard that I chose is SSH 468LC, and that is one of the history Common Core standards in which the goal is meant so that students can explain multiple causes and effects of historical events. To be specific, the grade level that I chose would be ninth grade social studies. And the specific assignment or timeline that I chose for this to address this topic would be the preludes to the French Revolution and the consequences that came afterwards. So my goal, in summary, is I want students to be able to explain the causes of the French Revolution and then the immediate effects that it had on the world around them afterwards. So the materials that I would like students to use for this assignment would be to have their textbook, and that can be any particular textbook. I don't know specifically which one I would use. And then also visual aids for this assignment, paintings of the time period, graphs or that can visualize statistics of the time period, etc. And then also their notebook that they would write notes in, annotations, etc. For the teacher materials, I would like the teacher to have the textbook. But in addition to the textbook, I would like the teacher to have an annotated version of it and have a lot of notes on it so that whenever the teacher is kind of giving the lesson plan, presenting it to students and explaining directions, they're or also if they're trying to help students, I would like the teacher to have those notes in front of them so that they're not wasting time flipping through pages. They know exactly what they're talking about, they can recollect their content, and they really know what they're talking about. And then, in addition to the textbook, I would also like the teacher to have annotated visual aids. So, for this assignment, and I'll get later into this, the teacher will present students with paintings and graphs and all that. I would like the teacher to have an annotated version of that with the same images but have their own notes on it so that the teacher can have a recollection of what specifically they're looking for, that the students can, sorry, that so that the teacher has an idea of what exactly they're looking for so that they're not jumping all over the place and we're not wasting time. So the bell ringer for the class, or the first thing that I would like the teacher to do whenever the class period starts. So the teacher will present students with a series of portraits of historical figures from the French Revolution. For the sake of this presentation, I just put a couple on the board. So like we have Robespierre, Napoleon Bonaparte, Louis the 16th, and also Brissot, all significant historical figures of their time. And the goal of this is not so much so that the students are hyper fixated on these particular people, because there's so many historical figures that are significant to the French Revolution, all of its preludes and its consequences. But it's really just to give students an idea of what we're going to be talking about, really. And yeah, just get them in the mood for it, I guess, give them a context. And then the second part of it obviously will be students will on each portrait. I would like them to write down their observations in their notebooks. And the point of this really delves into historical studies, and we're looking for context and everything. We're looking for deeper meanings. We're trying to find understanding. So I want students to think about the little things that add up to a bigger picture of the puzzle. You know, what are these people wearing? What is their facial expression, or how are they posing? So I guess as a example of this, take Louis the 16th for example. You can see he's decked out in gold. He has this grandeur posture right here. It's I'm better than you, I'm above you. Whereas if you have Brissot here, it's very colonial, it's very average, it's very middle class. That's how I would describe. And whenever you compare that to the king here, you get a big staunch difference. And that difference is what I want students to be able to explain to me, the teacher, or another teacher. So we're going to continue. I, we, y'all, you, or the GRR framework. So the teacher will assign a series of pages of the textbook that vary in content in terms of graphs, primary sources, etc. The teacher will then, for example, analyze taxes. This is an example. They analyze taxes imposed on the French population and explain how this economically crippled people and caused tension and conflict. Students will observe the teacher first. So what the teacher would do is, and because that kind of was worded a little weird, the teacher will assign pages from the textbook the students will analyze, and the first section, I, or the teacher will demonstrate the students on what to do specifically. So in this example, analyze taxes imposed on the French population, whether it was the church doing it, the king doing it, the second and third estate, or the first and second estates. Sorry. It's to kind of give students an idea of the social dynamics that were around the time period so that they can have an idea of, how was the third estate treated? How was the poor people treated? Or the rest of the 99% of the population. And the purpose of the I doing it is so that the students can kind of have an idea of what the teacher is looking for. And so the teacher will then pick another example and, in collaboration with students, do another primary source. Students will do this with the teacher. So we're still doing the same thing, analyzing a piece of the textbook, but this time the students are going to do it with the teacher instead of just simply observing them. And then lastly, the teacher will then assign students another example, and on their own, they will write down key takeaways from the example and its implications on the time period. So instead of it being all on the teacher now, or really dependent on the teacher, the student is going to be more independent, and they're going to come up with their own thoughts, their own perspectives, and their own interpretations. And then the differentiation, students will have the ability to choose from the series of examples provided by the teacher, whereas visual learners may prefer to analyze paintings or graphs, whereas readers may prefer to read primary sources. And the goal of this is really in the name. It's to allow differentiation in the classroom, because the reality is some students are more visual learners and some students are they prefer to read. That's just how it is. And I think that this is a good compromise to allow in the classroom. Collaboration. So for this assignment, then the teacher will divide the class in accordance with their learning level. And that could mean, are they strong readers? Are they good visualizers? Are they able to interpret things more efficiently? Kind of like that. And the division of the classroom, that really just comes from experience. The teacher knows their students, and they'll be able to tell what students would pair well with others. Each group will collaborate and share their takes and perspectives on their own historical example, and then the teacher will then assign each group collectively their own example, and the group will analyze it together. And then the teacher will move around the classroom and make observations and intervene if necessary. So what that means is, if the teacher is moving around the classroom and they come across a group where they're just stonewalled, they're not getting it, they're not able to figure out that deeper piece to it, or the small piece to the bigger puzzle, the teacher can intervene, give hints, or try to explain the material in a way that the students might understand in different ways. And that's really the purpose of the collaboration, so that students are working together, sharing their ideas, but then also the teacher is able to intervene and expedite or accelerate that process so that students are not falling behind. No one's falling behind. And then the formative assessment. So the teacher will assign students a blank web map, and students will fill it out, noting themes, the people, facts, events, etc. And really the purpose of that is just so students are able to demonstrate in some capacity what they're learning. and so that the teacher can have an idea of some of the key things that students are taking away and noting what might not they be taking away, what is something that students aren't writing down. And if it's something important that they're missing, then the teacher can reassess and adjust accordingly. And then students will then, using their web, answer a writing prompt asking, while being general, what are some factors that contributed to public unrest that preluded by the French Revolution? So it's asking what factors led to essentially the French Revolution. And it's a pretty in the wording of the presentation, it's meant to be general. It's not meant to be a research paper or a big giant thesis making this formal argument, but it's really just to get students, in the mindset of it, to think about it. What are they learning? What are they talking about? And yeah. So one of the student technology tools that I would like to use is Prezi. And Prezi is a presentation tool similar to PowerPoint, but it's more designed for students, or at least younger audiences. It has a lot more visualization. It's easier to maneuver, and it's very efficient in what it does. And I think that it's also easier for students to use because you can have different webs on it. You can have various images, and it collaborates well together and meshes well. And it's essentially storytelling. So you'll start at one bubble, then you'll move to another, another, and another. And I think that it's definitely appealing for students. And then the teacher technology tool is Adobe Express. Essentially, how this would work is students would make a Prezi, and then the teacher is able to use Adobe Express in terms of giving presentations on class material and content, and able to visualize for students what they're going over. That's essentially what Adobe Express is. It's a version of PowerPoint, but it's not so formal. It's very it definitely appeals to younger audiences, I would say. And then the second teacher technology tool that I chose was Google Classroom, something very basic. It can allow the teacher to give assignments and also receive assignments to be able to grade, to see progress. Whenever the students are making their Prezi, they can turn that Prezi into Google Classroom. Resources of the textbook can be put in the Google Classroom. The portraits, the paintings, the prompts, all of that can be done in Google Classroom. And I think that it would be an excellent choice for the teacher to use specifically for this lesson plan. Reflection ideas. So the teacher will know on if the lesson plan was successful based on the responses of students and their ability to collect their thoughts and observations on a particular historical piece, to connect it to the bigger picture, and how it's a cause to a much bigger event. Their responses should contain key takeaways and be somewhat explicit. And then additionally, students will be able to understand how those events led to certain consequences. So, for example, I was talking about taxes earlier. We need to understand. I want students to be able to understand how those taxes are affecting people. Are mothers being able to feed their children? Are fathers being able to take care of their wives and their family? Are people losing their homes because of this? Are people not having basic, commodities that humans would have? And whenever they're not having these things, that's going to create conflict, civil unrest. And they're going to look for scapegoats. They're going to point towards the church. They're going to point towards the king. And so, whenever we take into account all of these things, it's going to create some kind of revolution or some kind of government change, or at least a movement to change government. And that those reasons, those causes, I want students to be able to do that. I want them to be able to take all these things, explain it away, and look at the bigger picture. All right. I think that concludes this lesson plan. I hope you have a good day. Thank you.